All right, here we are. How's it going, everybody? Good to see you. Chuck Holton here. And if you just came over from the uh, CBN live, I'm sorry for the short duration of that one, but I'm just kind of very short on time this this weekend. Let's see. Are we getting a connection? Can you hear me? Let's see if I come up here. I need to make sure I'm on. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're on. All right. Okay, thank you for watching. Uh, do me a favor and again type into the chat box where you're watching from. And again, if you have questions, put them in the chat box and Connie will collect them all up into a document and I will answer them for you. But so I wanted to just kind of continue from where I left off over on the CBN Live. Uh, the, Hamas is trying very hard to pressure Israel. I reported yesterday that apparently the Biden administration has also been or was also up until the end of last year trying to pressure Israel to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. Apparently Joe Biden saw Netanyahu as an impediment to US policy, what US wanted to see happen over here. As you recall, the Biden administration was uh, trying to play both sides of the fence. They were saying, no, our support for Israel is ironclad. And then they were over there, yeah, but Israel shouldn't be actually bombing or doing anything violent in Gaza, or they should be letting more aid in, or what have you. So they weren't actually supporting Israel all that much, but they were trying to make it look like they supported Israel because there's a lot of liberal New York Jews that they wanted to keep happy because those people are some of the largest political donors in America. And so that I really believe that the Biden administration did not support Israel whatsoever in terms of their right to defend their country. They did what they did to look like they supported Israel so that they could, you know, make it look that way for their donors who happen to be Jewish. Now you could argue that, but without a doubt, this new report that came out showed that the Biden administration had given almost $1 billion, $880 million to NGOs, either directly or indirectly, that are involved in protesting against the current government of Israel. Now, where I come from, that'd be called an act of war. If a foreign country was meddling in the political process in my country and trying to overthrow a legitimately elected president or prime minister, that's an act of war. So kudos to the Trump administration for putting out this report, but it doesn't bode well. Now there are still weekly, if not daily, protests in different parts of Israel, and I feel for these people. Everybody's, nobody wants war. Everybody's tired of war. You can imagine the politicians in Israel would love nothing more than to live in a place where their people are safe and they don't have to spend tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars a year on their defense. Because those tens or hundreds of billions of dollars can be sent to do things that are more valuable. I mean, if you didn't need the defense, then you could use that money on schools. You could use it on social programs. You could use it on whatever. Or you could return it to the taxpayer and let them keep more of their own money. So there's nothing wrong with that. But unfortunately, there are people here in Israel who don't understand that and actually have convinced themselves that what the politicians in Israel really want is more war. And that's absurd. It really is. It's just absurd because a war doesn't help anybody. The money that they are spending on this war is profane. The economic cost to the country on top of that is horrific because of all the lost income from all those soldiers that are there. To say nothing of the loss of life. 450 plus soldiers have died in Gaza trying to liberate 250 hostages. That's terrible. It's horrific. Nobody wants that. So I saw a video of a protester giving an interview, and I clipped out a part of it to show you, just to kind of help you understand the way these people think, just how de- not depraved really, but just demented they are. I mean, really, uh, their thought process is not very logical. They're not thinking clearly. So let's listen to this. I have it labeled here as moron protester. Thank you, Placido. Appreciate that. Um, okay, so this is from last week's protest in Tel Aviv. There's another protest tonight that looks just like this.
The government can do it. The government just need to decide that they want to end the war, but because of a political situation, they don't want to end the war, and they don't.
Now, what? Wait, what? They they could stop the war, but they don't want to end the war because of the political situation. And what is this guy smoking? The the government could end the war. Yeah, they could end the war by losing it. That's the only way that they could possibly end the war without getting Hamas to come to some sort of agreement. The problem here is not the Israeli government. The problem is Hamas. They they still have all those prisoners. The war could end tomorrow if Hamas would just let the hostages go, but they won't. And if they won't, I would love to ask this guy, like, so how do you think, what do you think Hamas will do with those hostages? Okay, now let's listen to the rest of his what he said.
But because of a political situation, they don't want to end the war, and they don't want to bring back the hostages. The hostages are actually hostages of Hamas and hostages of the Israeli government.
I I don't even know really what to say about that. The the stupidity is strong with this one. They're hostages of the Israeli government. How so? Well, oh, so literally the point he's making is that, well, if Hamas is reasonable, if we just gave up, Hamas would give those hostages back. We could get them all back. All we have to do is just give up. Well, that is as close to treason as should be allowed in a free country. Because what this guy is advocating for is for the destruction of his own country. That's exactly what he's advocating for. He just doesn't see it. He just doesn't understand it. He's got this Pollyannic idea that, well, all we have to do is just stop the war. But they don't want to stop the war because they're holding the hostages hostage themselves. The Israeli government is holding those hostages. What? Are you are you stupid? I, that's just mind-boggling. Now, add to that the fact that these people, I want to show you these. I want to go back and look at these signs again in this protest. Okay, so listen, look at these signs. BB Escobar. So if you're not familiar, Pablo Escobar was a Colombian drug lord in Medellin, and he was a narco terrorist. So this guy's the people. These are Israelis now. Left wing Israelis in Israel are saying that their prime minister is a narco terrorist. What exactly are they trying to say there? What exactly does that mean? And you can tell that's a very highly produced sign. They've got T-shirts, they've got flags. There's some. If we go here, see these very well printed signs. This is not somebody drawing on a piece of cardboard. This is something you went to a print shop and got printed. And if you see the wide shots of these crowds, there are hundreds of these signs, identical signs in the crowd. Somebody is paying for those to be printed. What are those? Maybe $6-7 a piece. So what you have to ask yourself is, who is paying for all these signs, all these flags, and everything like that? Who's paying for that? Well, now we know, because the report that came out showed that for a long time the US government was helping to pay for that, because the NGOs that organize these protests, one of them is called White and Blue Future. I talked about that before, and they have threatened to sue anybody who mentions this about them. So I may get sued for telling you this, but I don't care. I've been sued before. Uh, those guys apparently received millions of dollars, and they're a left-wing Israeli organization, NGO, that's pushing for a two-state solution, which nobody wants. Palestinians don't want it, and the Israelis don't want it, but Blue and White Future wants it, and they are accepting millions of dollars from other NGOs in the United States who get their money from the US government. So there you go. There's that. Kendra says there are still 50 hostages. That's correct. Only 20 of them are living, they believe. Now, President Trump at this White House dinner last Friday night, last night, made this statement like, we're going to very shortly be receiving. Let's see. I'm going to read it to you because I want to quote him correctly. Let's see where that went. He said, "We got most of the hostages back. We're going to have another 10 coming out very shortly, and we hope to have that finished quickly." Okay, that was his exact quote. We're going to have another 10 coming very shortly. That's what he said. Well, does this mean that Trump knows something that we don't about the negotiations? Or is this another, we're going to take over the Panama Canal, we're going to annex Greenland, we're going to make Canada the 51st state? I could go on and on and on. There's, Trump just says stuff. And it doesn't really matter to Trump if it's backed up by the truth. So there's that. So now everybody else is sort of going, okay, what changed? Well, I read on the last live that this Hamas military spokesman came out with a very cryptically worded statement. So it's his first statement since March. This guy's been hiding in a cave somewhere, and or running around dressed in a burqa. And he didn't come out and say we're going to have a ceasefire deal. Actually, most of his talk was pretty belligerent and saying we're ready to continue this war of attrition as long as needs be. Usually when they say something like that, what they're actually saying is we would really like this war of attrition to stop very soon. That you just have to learn how to read terrorist speak. Okay. And I've got 20 plus years of learning how to do that. So if you read between the lines in this guy's speech, it sounds like they're one tiny baby step closer to a hostage ceasefire deal than they were a few days ago. But I personally believe that it's premature to call this a breakthrough because we know that Hamas does this from time to time in order to torture the Israeli people. They want the Israeli people to get their hopes up and have them dashed, get their hopes up and have them dashed, get their hopes up and have them dashed over and over and over again. And Hamas, if they do anything well, it's psychologically torture the Israeli people. That's one thing that Hamas is pretty good at. All right. Somebody asked, who gets more sleep, you or President Trump? I'll get to that. Put that on the list. Okay. Tell you what, let's go to the list of questions now. And I've got to go find it again. Somebody post the link to the list. There it is. I got it. Okay. So let's go through our questions. Maryland's Planet. I forgot the story how the term Nimrod got its attachment to being stupid. Does anybody know? Yes, actually, we were just talking about that today. Uh, good question. So, Nimrod actually means good hunter. And in the old, my wife told me this. I didn't know this. I guess she asked Chat GPT or looked it up or something. But in the old Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd cartoons, when Elmer Fudd would shoot at Bugs Bunny and miss, Bugs Bunny would say something like, "Great shot, Nimrod." And what he was actually saying was sarcastically, "Great shot, good hunter." Not a very good hunter, so he was being sarcastic. Of course, apparently, most Americans did not catch the biblical reference to the word Nimrod and didn't understand that the word Nimrod meant good hunter. And so they just took it to be some sort of derogatory term for somebody, in this case, Elmer Fudd. And that's where we got to the point where calling somebody a Nimrod equates to being stupid in America. So that was fascinating to me. Nafid's Al Farisi says if both Bedouin and Druze serve in the IDF, then how would Netanyahu deal with Druze versus Bedouin in Syria? It's a very good question. We got asked that last night. I don't really know the answer, except that I I would venture to say that the Druze and Bedouin in Israel are pretty well separated. The Bedouin are more in the south, the Druze are up in the north. There are a few Bedouin on the way down to the Dead Sea going east from Jerusalem, but eh, most of them, I believe, are down in the south. They don't mix a lot. Now, there have been some places where Druze and Bedouin do mix, like the universities. There are a couple of universities in Syria where there was video coming out of big lunchroom brawls between the Druze and the uh, not Druze and the Arab, um, people. So or Muslims, I guess. So there has been some clashes, but I haven't heard of any here in Israel. I believe the Druze and the Bedouins that are in the IDF see themselves as IDF troops, Israelis, and so they can overlook their differences. I would hope. That's a very good question, though. Diane Britson asks, will you and Connie return to Jish and Aramaic Christians and Ancient Bible this trip, possibly? No, probably not, because I've got too many other things to do. And we've done that story a bunch. So it hasn't changed a whole lot at this point. But I am talking to those people. Our friend Naveen up there sends me messages almost every day. So Scott Nassler says, question, how many hostages are slated to be handed over? President Trump said 10. That's been the number that's been bandied about since for the last 12 weeks as they've been trying to negotiate another ceasefire. But I don't believe we're actually that close to seeing hostages be released. I hope we are. I would love to be wrong on that. And if I am, I will rejoice if we see some hostages come out. But from what I can tell, Hamas doesn't sound like they're anywhere close to making a deal. Um, Linda Pettibone says, "How many thousand terrorists has to be freed for one hostage this time?" Uh, that's one of the sticking points actually in the negotiations. Is Hamas refuses to even talk about uh, how many prisoners they should get back for each hostage. That's they've been just dragging their feet on that and have not given the mediators a good answer. And remember, this is not Hamas sitting on this side of the table, Israel sitting on this side of the table, and they're talking. This is shuttle diplomacy. So Israel's talking to mediators from Qatar, Egypt, whatever, the United States. And then those guys go over to a different room that has the Hamas guys in it and say, okay, here's what they said. What do you think? And the Hamas guys go, well, I don't know. We'll think about it. We'll get back to you in a few days. And they've been really dragging their feet on this. As I said, they are working really hard to pressure Israel through psychological pressure and through informational pressure, and trying to get the media to put pressure on Israel. And so far, that's not working. Israel's not playing that game anymore. So, how dependent Israel is to oil and gas coming through Turkey? Why does Israel give dollars to Erdogan's son-in-law? Well, so Israel does get a large portion of its oil and gas from Azerbaijan. Those pipelines do go through Turkey. They either go through Georgia, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, and through Syria and Israel, I guess. I need to do more study on that and figure that out. It's a very good question. Uh, but that is the majority of Israel's oil. That's one of the reasons why Israel supports Azerbaijan, although I think that that's short sighted and immoral for Israel to do that. That's a transactional reason to to support Azerbaijan. But when you see your drones and technology being used to murder Christians in Armenia, that should bother people here in Israel. Who do the Druze get along with? Wait, PC says Druze do not permit out marriages or converts. That's true. You cannot uh, convert to Druze religion, which I'm not sure why you'd really want to. It's a mishmash of various different beliefs. They believe in reincarnation and stuff like that, and they're pretty secretive about it. What I noticed up in Majd al Shams is that it appears to me that most Druze people are just secular Druze. They look Arabic. When you look at them, you go, those guys are probably Muslim, but when you see their women, you realize they're not Muslim because the women go about dressed like American women do. We saw girls walking around in mini skirts up there yesterday. I mean, not that I paid any attention to mini skirts, but we did hear that there were girls wearing mini skirts somewhere up there, right, honey? Okay, so any of us techies going to give up our electricity to help Armenia? No, don't expect that. And it is a difficult challenge. It is a difficult problem, but it is just really unfortunate that Israel has been so ambivalent regarding Armenia because Israel and Armenia have a lot in common. They're both part of the Holy Land. Uh, they they've both been persecuted for their faith and genocided for their faith, and they should support one another. They just don't, unfortunately. Okay, folks, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and hit that like button. I know you need to be reminded. It's right there. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. Just hit the little thumbs up. Go ahead. Do it. Do it. Hit it. Come on. Punch the button. It's not, nothing bad's going to happen. Just punch that button, and that helps the channel and helps you. Okay. All right. So Ruben says, "Nice save, Chuck." Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that Oscar was the one who told me that there was a girl in a miniskirt. I personally didn't even look. I wouldn't have. As, I would have averted my eyes over there. Yeah. So I saw another question up above that I wanted to get to. Um, Daniel, what are your thoughts on the great eclipse in 2027? It's the first I've heard of it. That's my thoughts. I don't know anything about it. What do you think about what Sheikh Jabbar? Shoot, where'd it go? Dadgummit. This scrolly thing is a real pain. It just disappeared. Maybe maybe it got retracted. Okay, because I saw this question, I was starting to read it, and it just went away. Uh, okay, looking for more questions. If you have any other questions or comments, put it in there. Uh, Chuck, do you think that the definition of the word evil has taken on a new light and not a good one? Mike Silva asks. Uh, Somebody asked me, I don't know, a year or two ago, how do you know what is good and what is evil? You're traveling around the world, all these places, there are multiple sides to each conflict. Of course, all sides believe they are right. How do you make a determination which is good and which is evil? And I said, well, good is anything that leads to life and flourishing. So anybody who is attempting to create life and flourishing is on the good side. Evil is anything that leads to death. So anybody who is the impetus for more death is on the evil side. Now you might say, well, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense because both sides are killing people. Well, take Ukraine, for example. Ukraine is certainly engaging in violence against Russia to try to drive Russia out of their country. So they are defending themselves from aggression by Russia, and they weren't they were minding their own business prior to February 2022. So that people always come on and go, no, they weren't. They were bombing the Russians in the Donbass region. No, they weren't. I was there. I went out with the Ukrainian troops before the war started, and I was watching, and they weren't firing on Russians over in Donbass. They did some counter battery fire on artillery positions that were firing at them, but they were not randomly shelling over inside Donbass. That's Russian propaganda. So if you look weigh in this equation that Ukraine is defending itself, so what they're trying to do is preserve life and flourishing for their own people, whereas Russia in this case is on a war of conquest and empire and is trying to take over their neighbor, to take land that doesn't belong to it. Well, what Russia is doing leads to death, and what Ukraine is doing leads to life, or is at least aimed at bringing life and abundance and not death and destruction. Here in Israel, the equation is very easy. There's nothing that Hamas does that does not lead to death. There's nothing that Israel does that is not meant to bring life and flourishing, not just to the Israelis, but to the people in Gaza eventually as well. They're trying to rid Gaza of the scourge of Hamas. That's good. That's not evil. Okay, that's how I can tell without a shadow of a doubt that leftism is evil, because everything leftism pushes for leads to death or less life, less flourishing. So whether it's abortion, euthanasia, gay marriage, transgenderism, all those sort of hot button issues that the left pushes for, they all lead to fewer births, fewer people, more deaths. So that is all evil. Less. Personally, I think that we should be pushing for things that lead to life and flourishing. So that go have more babies, get married, stay together, be faithful to your spouse. All those kinds of things that we ought to be standing up for all the time, and that in that way we can know we are on the side of the good. Well, you got me preaching there for a little bit. Linda Pettibone asks, "How many thousand terrorists has to be freed for one hostage this time?" Yeah, I answered that. I'm not. They haven't come up with that number yet. God doesn't want a two-state either, but it's going to happen at some point. Uh, well, Jesus changes everything. Thinks that there will be a two-state solution. Right now, nobody in any position of power wants it on either side. Internet person, pocket pixie thinks I'm just making things up. Okay. I hear a Druze leader say it best. If I teach my children to love thy neighbor, all can get along and have community as God desires. Well, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right, folks. So we just went over 30. What are we on? 31 minutes. So I was going to do 30 minutes. So that is about all I've got. I've got to go get some packages done that are going to air next week. I got some great stuff coming, and I will put up the video. If you missed it over on the CBN Live, I'll put up the video of the interview I did with the archaeologist who gave us a tour of Nimrod's fortress this morning. It was fascinating. It was really good stuff. So you're not going to want to miss that. That will be available for supporters over at chuckholton.com first, and eventually it'll make its way over to YouTube. But you're going to love it. If you're into biblical history and stuff like that, you're going to love this discussion. It's really cool. And he gave us a tour and showed us around this amazing fortress up there in northern Israel. So thank you all for watching. Appreciate all of you. Again, please make sure you